everyone, and welcome back to a year in the TikTok of HannahTalksBodies. So, quick disclaimer, I'm a little short on time this week. My birthday was during the week, and right now I'm recording on the weekend, because I record on the weekends, and we just have some stuff going on, some fun, some responsibility-related stuff. So I only have about an hour to record. Normally I record for about an hour and a half to sometimes up to 2 hours. But I don't have that this week, so we're going to, my hope is to at least cover these last 12 TikToks, because this is all we have left for her. And then if we have any time left, I want to cover the AMA decision. But for now, let's just jump right into it.
I think because we talk about body image and fat phobia together so much, we sometimes forget those are separate things. And it is actually exhausting being someone who talks about anti-fatness frequently to have those conversations be misunderstood and derailed into being about body image. When I'm talking about systemic anti-fatness, I am not talking about how I feel about my body. I love my body with the best of them, but I cannot love my body out of employment discrimination or medical discrimination. I can't love my body into equal pay or equal access to health care. Fat people live in a world that pays us less, charges us more, denies us health care, openly ridicules and excludes us, and then tells us the solution is to love our bodies. But it's not. The solution is to give fat people access to the same rights, resources, and services that thin people get without question. The solution is activism and policy change. I think because we talk...
Okay, so I want to just say real quick, we're not going to go down the route of talking about the before and after pictures or the finding cute clothes in your size, because as far as I've seen so far and as far as I remember, Hannah hasn't really talked that much about it. So we're going to focus primarily on some of the other things. When it comes to equal pay, I really want to see the study, because I think one of them have said something about a mysterious study about how fat people are paid less. I would like to see it, but no one has cited it. So this is something where it's like, I want to know where this wage gap that you're talking about comes from. Because if it's taking into account all fat people, including the morbidly obese who are on disability, then yeah, there's going to be a pay gap between them and the general population. If it's stratified for those who are employed, I want to know the general education level of these people, and that is not saying that fat people are uneducated. That's not saying anything regarding that. I'm just talking about the general overarching category of fat people, and it's a very broad range. And the thing is that they even talk about fat people, but even if there was a study, it would probably have been done on those with a BMI of 30 or greater, but a BMI of 30 can still be under 200 pounds, which by and large for a lot of the fat acceptance community would not be considered fat. That wouldn't even be considered a small fat, depending on which area of the fat acceptance movement you talk to. So even that wouldn't necessarily be a great representation. So I'm really like, I need to know where this mysterious pay gap comes from and what they're citing in regards to that. When it comes to the medical availability and healthcare, as far as I've seen, every FA that we've looked at has had some sort of healthcare that hasn't prevented them from having access to a doctor. The only thing that they talk about is that the doctor comments on their weight, which is, I believe at this point, it's kind of required that they go over like a certain set of criteria. I think it's, I think they have to monitor and talk to you about blood oxygen level, weight, and blood pressure. Maybe not blood oxygen level. One of my family members struggled with low blood oxygen at one point, and so that's kind of stuck in my mind. But I know at least blood pressure and weight, and I think that there's at least one other criteria that they have to check and then they have to talk to you about as part of like an ongoing health initiative sort of thing. But that doesn't prevent you from getting treatment. That's the thing, is that the doctors have to talk to you about this. In fact, most health insurance, and maybe this is where it comes in, most health insurance companies would require that be addressed in the visit in order for the visit to qualify under their preventative health policy. So there's that as well, in which case that's not the doctor's fault. And to like you're it's just part of, whether you like it or not, maintaining a healthy weight is just part of like the checkup. It's one of the, like, you can be healthy in every other way, but your health would still be a marker of, okay, this is something you need to improve on. It's not it There's no, like, I know they love to circle this all always back around to morality, but there's no moral here. It's just, it would be like me taking a look at a child's test scores and being like, oh, they're doing really well in writing, reading, and science, but they're struggling in math, so they need and every time we talk, and that's a continued issue, um, and I've tried several things and I can't get the kid to work with me on their math, then that's something that would come up repeatedly. It's not necessarily a moral failing of the child for not getting math or struggling with math or not wanting to do math, but it's something that still has to come up because it's still an issue for their academic success, just as like your weight would be an impediment to your health success. I don't know where these oppression factors are coming from. She doesn't cite anything, she just kind of puts it out there. So I don't know where this is coming from. I wish they would cite more studies in regards to these things, because a lot of what we've looked at didn't actually address their claims, or it's on a completely separate topic. So when it comes to medical discrimination, please give some sort of statistics or a study or something. And then same with the wage gap.
There is a saying I see a lot in toxic fitness spaces, which is, you'll never regret a workout. Just do it. You'll never regret it. And I don't know about anyone else, but there are definitely a lot of workouts from my past that I regret. I regret every workout I ever did where I forced myself to do it, even though my mind or my body or both were telling me that what I actually needed was rest. I regret the times when I worked out to the point of pain, tears, injury, or to the point of feeling superior to other people. I regret the times.
So when it comes to, I want to stop it right there, because I feel like I've heard that you'll never regret a workout, but there's two separate spaces that comes in on, and it's one, I do believe that there's a toxic fitness space that would tell you to work out even if you're feeling well, even if you feel like you're prone to injury that day, even if your muscles are like really fatigued and you can't. I think that there are spaces where they're like, fuck it, do it until you hurt yourself, basically. But for a lot of people, saying you'll never regret the workout is a way of trying to change the mindset, because just because you don't want to do a workout doesn't mean that you shouldn't do the workout. Sometimes we just feel lazy that day. And when she talks about rest, it's like there's two different types of rest that she could be referring to. One being a bodily rest, meaning that your muscles feel very worn and fatigued, and pushing them that day may not be a good idea for you. I've experienced this when it comes, because I've had issues with repetitive motion injuries in my arm, actually both arms. And there have been times when I did like a workout the previous day and I thought about doing it, and I'm like, okay, I want to do another one today, but I could feel the tightness that would trigger another injury later. And so instead what I would choose to do that day is more stretching and then just focus on the lower body, or just maybe do cardio or something. And so those kinds of adjustments, I think, in order to be healthy, in order to do it where it's not a detriment to you, are important to recognize, okay, I know myself, I know that I'm prone to injury here, and it feels a little weak today, it feels a little unstable, so I think I'm going to opt for something else today. I completely get that, and I think that that's worth, paying attention to and acting on. But then there's the way of rest, because I've seen fat acceptance people conflate the two. And the concept of rest, meaning I don't feel like doing it today, therefore I shouldn't, because clearly my body's telling me I need rest. No, sometimes you just don't feel like doing shit. I take my dog for a walk minimum of 5 days a week, sometimes up to 7, and sometimes I just don't feel like taking her. It's not so much that I need rest, it's that I don't feel like investing the half hour into taking her for a walk. I do it anyway because it's her major exercise for the day. But like sometimes you just don't feel like doing it. Sometimes like my body feels completely fine. I'm full of energy, but I don't feel like jumping on the treadmill to run that day. So you know what I do? I jump on the treadmill and I might lower it and do a speed walk instead of a run or something, but I still focus on getting that movement in. So there's like I agree that you shouldn't work out yourself to the point of pain and injury. Although there's a again with the pain, there's a couple of different things because if you've had musculoskeletal injuries, you know the difference between the kind of pain when you've been lifting weights so long and then you're kind of starting to struggle and stuff. That is somewhere between fatigue and not fatigue, but like effort and pain. And if you're not used to the sensation, you can it definitely feels like pain, but it's not actually gonna hurt you. And then there's the pain of like I said with injury that you feel like is about to happen, and then you do it and then you really mess up your arm. And I think it takes a little bit of practice to know where that line is for yourself. But those are two different types of pain. Like there's a couple of different ways that this can be interpreted, and I feel like it doesn't account for there is like a level of nuance in exercise, and it's not really being addressed.
When my workouts were motivated by self-hatred, insecurity, comparison, people-pleasing, or self-punishment. And by the way, all of these scenarios were normal for me, as they are for many people. So if the way that you're moving your body isn't bringing you joy, you can either change the way you're moving your body, or you can just take a break from exercise for a while. Both of those are better options than living a miserable life.
Here's the thing though, like that's a pretty big gap, moving your body in a way that brings you joy and then moving your body in a way that brings self-punishment. That's a very large gap. If it is a form of self-punishment, I think like I'm not a big fan of that mindset by any means. I don't think that that's very helpful. But as long as you're not hurting yourself, I think it's a way to get out some of that pent up, whether it's anxiety or what have you. But even so, self punishment is like an extreme. Moving in a way that brings joy is great. Like there's forms of exercise that you can really love. Yes. Do I always feel like lifting weights? No. Does lifting weights bring joy for me? Not really. But I like that I get stronger. So while the activity itself doesn't bring joy, it gets me the results that I want. And it doesn't breed self-hatred either. So I don't know. That seems like a very big jump. There are middle grounds that the FAs just tend to brush right over.
If you've watched any videos on my page, then you know that I use the word fat to talk about my own body and about fatness in general. And a lot of people do, because the word fat is a morally neutral description, just like tall or short. And the word fat has also frequently been used as a weapon of abuse. So a lot of people still experience feelings of pain and shame with it, which is completely understandable. Before I was comfortable using the word fat, I had a therapist who offered some alternative language for me to use, which I found to be very helpful at the time. So if you feel like you need a stepping stone for yourself, or if you need different language to use with people in your life who aren't comfortable with the word fat, feel free to use this. Another morally neutral way to talk about bodies is to talk about them in general descriptive terms. So saying things like a person in a larger body, a person in a medium body, or a person in a smaller body. This can make it easier to start thinking about body size as something that's morally neutral, and it can be helpful if you're not ready to use the word fat just yet. If you've watched...
So I don't really have a problem with the whole fat as a neutral term. Again, though, this hyperfixation on morality. And I noticed that because I think that Hannah's in the camp that obesity is a morally negative word when it's a health term because of the and someone explained it to me that obesity is the Greek word for to have eaten oneself fat. And the thing is that that's true. You don't get calories from thin air. You have to overconsume in order to get fat, in order to become obese. But that doesn't mean that I just don't think that people put it on a moral ground nearly as often as the FAs do. And I feel like the putting forth of morality and this and she talks about morally neutral terms like larger body, medium body, smaller body, and that sort of thing, as well as fat as a neutral descriptor. And it's like, so as opposed to what, it's kind of hard because most people don't talk about their bodies as like a separate entity the way the fat acceptance movement does. So comparing other ways of talking about weight feels a little disjointed. Like, so are you saying that if someone says skinny, that's a morally loaded term? Is it the healthy body thing that you're honing in on as like the morally superiority term or whatever? Because healthy body weight is a thing. So that wouldn't surprise me actually if that was like the big issue and they equate healthy with a term of morality, attaching morality to it, when healthy can be very much a neutral descriptor as well. A healthy weight, meaning a weight that is unlikely to have to impact other parts of the body that would cause disease or other issues. It doesn't have to be morally loaded in any way. If you take offense to the term healthy, that sounds like a personal issue. But she didn't actually say that, so it's kind of hard because she's vague here. But it was the morality argument again that just fucking gets me.
I can always identify someone who doesn't have a great grasp on history if they see medicalization as a stamp of inherent virtue. This comes up a
This is so fucking condescending. This is so fucking condescending that doesn't understand history very well. If they do XYZ as though you are a paragon of historical knowledge. Please. Please. There's the thing is that I think as someone who's worked in education, I've learned how to phrase my language in a way that isn't meant to be pretentious in a lot of ways. Like I tend to view it. I don't like putting something down to people don't have a good understanding or grasp of history or this I hate it when people call other people stupid when it's a matter of a gap in knowledge. Because for me, and sorry, this is going to be a very brief tangent, but for me, stupid is a choice and ignorance is a matter of exposure. So people can absolutely choose to be stupid. But I think on the grand scheme of things, most people are just have varying levels of ignorance that can be fixed. Like, just because someone may not know the full, and we're going to listen to her in a minute for her actual point, but let's take the medicalized terms. Maybe they don't understand the full history or scope of medicalized terms. But that doesn't mean that they don't have a good grasp or a good understanding. It means that they're missing information. It's just if we, perhaps I'm getting nitpicky over this. Perhaps I'm overly sensitive due to my job. But for me, there's a difference between a value statement of they just don't get it or they don't have a good grasp of it. Maybe it's not really well, I think maybe I'm nitpicking Hannah on this one. It's the superiority that's said with that statement that bugs me, I think, more than anything. Rather than the words used, it's the intent and the attitude.
a lot when I talk about how the word obese is a slur. At least one person will always pop their head out of the ground to say, obese is a medical term, as if that somehow makes it better. You know what else used to be a
It to a certain extent though, it it's not that it makes it better, but obese is a medical term. It has specific connotations to it. Saying someone's fat is to say someone's fat is to say someone's fat. Saying someone's obese is to acknowledge that there are health factors equated with it. Depending on what's happening in the conversation, obese would be the better term to use. It depends here. Not everyone is in the business of protecting delicate feelings. Sometimes if you're talking facts and stuff, then you have to use the term obesity because that is what's judged, not fatness.
Medical term, like a lot of bad shit we don't say anymore, because we realized it was stigmatizing as fuck and it actively harmed people. You can go.
So, yes and no. The thing is that most of the words don't start out as, and I'm not talking about obesity in this one. In this one, I'm no longer comfortable saying the word, but it would be like the R slur towards those with developmental disabilities. And that actually, I was watching the first season of Law and Order SVU, and they openly used that word because at the time it was a medical term. And for a long time, that term, it's antiquated now, which is why I don't feel comfortable saying it. It wasn't meant to have a stigmatizing or whatever bullshit you're trying to say. It was the medical term of the time. They changed it because it had turned into a slur. It had turned into something to shame someone with those disabilities. But it didn't start out that way. So to say that, they changed it because they realized they were, the connotation I'm getting from her is that it was wrong and therefore they changed it. No, it became wrong. And obesity isn't, still, even if someone's going to belittle you or something, they're not going to be like, you're obese. They're going to say you're fat. It's just not the same. And furthermore, obesity, no, we're gonna go ahead and listen.
Google them, I'm not going to say them here. Science and language are both constantly evolving and updating. The medical establishment is not exempt from this. If anything, it's actually a particularly strong example of how this happens. We don't need to look too far back into history at all to see how medical terminology and practices change. For example, homosexuality is no longer diagnosed as a mental illness. Female hysteria is not something that's diagnosed anymore. Cocaine and heroin are no longer prescribed as anesthetics or cough suppressants. Lysol cleaning spray is no longer used as a douche.
All of these things are true, but that's the female hysteria and homophobia no longer being classified as disease. This is very different than the actual topic and then Lysol not being used as a douche. Those are disease categories that were removed because they realized female hysteria wasn't what they thought it was. I'm not going to go into female hysteria. And they realized that Lysol was not good to, shove up there. But that's not the same as medical terms. Now, the only term that I know off the top of my head was the one that I mentioned was the R slur. And the thing is, though, is that obesity hasn't, like I said, hasn't gotten that stigma to it. And the only reason why I've seen that you guys dislike the term obesity is because it means that you contributed to your weight, which is true. It's true. It's not used as, obesity isn't used as weighted, at least not very often. I guess it's not true that it hasn't been used as an insult, because I can remember a couple of Amberlynn Reed live streams where it was. I don't know. It just doesn't have to me, it's retained a level of its medical connotations rather than strictly becoming an insult the way other words have. But this, we'll finish watching and then.
We don't perform ice pick lobotomies anymore, and doctors no longer advocate for the health benefits of smoking cigarettes. Oops. More importantly, when a marginalized group tells you that a word or practice harms them, you can just go ahead and believe them.
Okay, but and this is where we get into it. You say marginalized groups. The thing to argue here is, are fat people really marginalized? Because what they don't seem to understand, and I think it's because they believe that fat is like purely fucking genetic or some bullshit, even though they'll contradict themselves, and I'm not specifically talking about Hannah here, but we've seen the fat acceptance movement contradict themselves on that point a couple of times. But putting all that aside, we have to talk about whether fatness is in a marginalized class, and I don't believe it to be, because for me, in order for someone to be marginalized, there has to be something fundamental about themselves that they can't change, whether that be skin color, ability status, sexual orientation, that sort of thing. You can 100% change your weight. You can't change your age, you can't change your height, you can't change your skin color, but you can change your weight. Whether you're marginalized is already in question. And the thing about when marginalized people say that this harms them, go ahead and believe them. But the thing is that that acts as though everyone says that it is, and that's not the case. Let's pretend for a moment that fat people are a marginalized class. There are a number of fat people, a large number of fat people, that don't view obesity as a slur. So then who do you believe? The ones that say it is a slur, or those that don't? And I know that Hannah would probably say you believe those that feel they are harmed, but that just because you feel harmed doesn't mean that you are harmed. So, and if it's not a general consensus with the vast majority of fat people, and we're talking outside of the internet here, we're not like, because I think an issue with the fat acceptance movement is that a lot of them are just chronically online. Some of them are terminally online. So there is a level here of, you may think that your sample of people that view that as an oppressive word is highly skewed, because people that are on TikTok, people who are chronically online or terminally online, are going to be very different from the general populace. So that's not really a good reason to say just because someone belongs to a marginalized class, and again, we're going to pretend that fat people fit into that for a moment, even if it's as much as 10% of that marginalized class say that this harms them, it's only 10%. It is in the vast minority still. The issue with the R slur, and granted, I don't know the full etymology of this word, but that became so widespread as an insult and a way to enact cruelty onto others that it changed, although there might have also been other things such as more accurate labeling that also played a role there. Obesity, if people are going to criticize your weight, they're going to call you a fat bitch, not an obese bitch. So I don't know. Thoughts? I want to hear your thoughts on this one.
I wasted years of my life trying to convince people that I was the exception to their fat phobia. I knew the stereotypes were that fat people are lazy, sloppy, and stupid, and so I devoted all of my energy to proving.
Is this a re-up? I thought I already covered this one. Didn't I? Didn't I already cover this one?
That I was hardworking, meticulous, and intelligent. But it never mattered. And even though I have all of those qualities, working so hard to make them visible all the time never changed the minds of people who were committed to othering me. It never made them accept me instead. I wasn't helping myself or other fat people by working to be seen as in compliance with an oppressive and incorrect belief system, because ultimately all it did was validate their stereotypes, not my worthiness. If you're interested in taking the next step and learning more, check out my course, Healing the Wounds of Fat Phobia and Learning to Take Up Space, which is available on the Dive-Through app.
So I think this is like a standard script she has to promote this, because I'm pretty sure she said nearly word for word this exact whole fucking TikTok in a previous part when I was covering her. I already pretty much said everything I wanted to say there. The only reason why I sampled this was because it seems like that whole thing wasn't as genuine as I thought. It's her script for an ad, which I thought was interesting.
As a therapist, I do a lot of work with clients on improving their relationships with their bodies, and I do this work with clients of all sizes. But the way that I do that work with clients of different sizes looks Very different, but probably not in the way that you're thinking. For thin folks, our work almost exclusively focuses on repairing the internal experience. There may be some light work on setting boundaries with friends and family about diet and body talk, but overwhelmingly the work is about allowing the individual to be free from the fat phobia they may have learned from external sources, but that they themselves enforce. On the flip side, when I work with other fat people, we still do the internal work, but we also do a lot more. We address the internal, the interpersonal, and the systemic experience. Internalized fat phobia has taught us to police our own bodies, but we are also existing in a world full of people and institutions that purposefully and explicitly police our bodies in ways that thin folks.
Okay, so I could very well have just completely misinterpreted what she's just said. But what I'm getting so far from this is that she is almost using her platform as a therapist to push an agenda she has. Am I wrong there? Because it seems like for regardless when they're talking about bodies and stuff, it's about uplifting the fat people and getting them to recognize their oppression, while with the thinner people there might be a little bit of setting boundaries and loving yourself, but it's also about unlearning your fat phobia. Am I wrong? Or does it seem like she's like pushing her own agenda and her own ideology on her clients? And perhaps her clients are already in that realm, and so it's really not pushing anything. But I don't know, it seems a little sus to me.
Don't experience. It's not just the individual or the occasional insensitive person enforcing these limitations. We have to navigate a vast sea of people and systems that put concrete barriers in our way. For example, when preparing for a medical appointment, a thin person may be concerned about being weighed at the doctor's office because seeing the number on the scale might trigger feelings of comparison or worthlessness. A fat person might also be concerned about the emotions that the number on the scale could elicit for them, but we are also concerned about how the number on the scale may trigger bad or reduced care from our medical providers, because it could very well result in criticism, contempt, diversion, or flatly being denied medical care at all. So for fat folks,
No, I'm sorry. At least from the examples that Hannah's given, I have yet to see anyone denied medical care without due cause, without due reason, simply because they're fat. If you're talking about the surgeries and people not wanting to perform surgeries on fat people, there are greater risks that other surgeons and stuff may not be comfortable at your size. Or there's greater risks that just even if they are comfortable, your risks are higher. And they don't want to kill their patients. That's not being denied medical care. That is a weighing of cost versus benefit on the doctor's part. They have to think about what it can be risked here.
I am not just teaching clients how to self-soothe and remain focused when they feel stressed. I am also teaching them how to advocate for themselves in these various situations so that they can access the same resources thin folks get without question. We talk about travel, shopping, job hunting, salary negotiations, school, recreation, dating, healthcare, and more, because size discrimination shows up in big ways in all of these areas. So, if you're a therapist who serves fat clients and the only work that you're doing with them is about changing their mindset and healing their emotions, but you're not giving them any practical tools to navigate the discrimination they will experience in the real world, then they are being wildly underserved by you.
That was so fucking pretentious and condescending. Oh, I did not like that. That pissed me off so fucking much. A therapist should be in the realm of providing assistance with that person's own mental space. Oppression, in terms of fatness, and I want to be clear, I'm only talking in terms of fatness, is at least partially self-inflicted because you ate yourself to that size, and isn't as prevalent as I think the FAs like to say, because so much of it seems to be subjective based on how they interpreted other people's actions. Not the actions themselves, but how they were interpreted. I've seen a ton of fat acceptance people put thought crimes on people because they didn't like the way someone looked at them. And again, with the employment and school, it's like, I want to see where this oppression is on an objective level. Where is your data on this?
Story time. I have had severe chronic back pain my whole life, ever since I was like 5 years old, and I have done literally everything imaginable to try to make it better with little to no success. My pain got progressively worse over time, and about 4 years ago when it became particularly severe, I decided it was finally time to consider surgery, so I made an appointment with an orthopedic surgeon. At the appointment, they weighed me, they x-rayed my back, and then they had me wait for the doctor. The doctor came in and very quickly let me know that I needed to have a spinal fusion surgery, and I needed to have one as quickly as possible. He showed me the x-rays and explained that I not only had a spinal deformity, which I already knew, but that the friction between two of my vertebrae had caused a fracture. So I had a broken back. And I was like, got it. When can we schedule surgery? But he responded and said, well, the problem is your weight. Unfortunately, we're going to need you to lose some weight before we would be willing to do surgery on you. But luckily, we have an in-house weight loss program that we're going to refer you to. And there are many things I could have said in response to this, but I decided to try to appeal to this doctor as someone who, in theory, should want to do no harm. So I told him, I have a history of disordered eating, and weight loss behaviors are very unsafe for me. And by the look on his face, he clearly did not believe that I ever had an eating disorder. And so
I don't know if it's that he didn't believe that you never had an eating disorder. I think it, honestly, to me, if I had to say anything, it sounds kind of like an excuse that it's the whole blanket, all forms of weight loss, anything, weight loss behaviors is unsafe for you, and you're basically saying you're not willing to do it, which puts him at an impasse. This isn't him, denying you the surgery until you lose weight simply because he thinks you would look better with weight loss. Back surgery requires you to lay on your front, meaning that your breathing airways are going to be a little more compressed, and there's a higher chance of you being put on a ventilator. And the reason why I say this is because I have a relative who has to have back surgery as well, but is a chronic smoker with COPD, and the doctor would prefer them to quit smoking for a few months before they went into surgery because of the risks. Not that they're taking that, but there's greater risks here because of your weight, whether you want that acknowledged or not. And she's like, in theory, he wants to do no harm. He doesn't want to do any harm. But part of not doing any harm is not doing a surgery that he is not confident in that you will make it out of without serious complications. That's part of do no harm. So just because you didn't get what you wanted doesn't mean that he did you harm. Just because he told you to lose weight doesn't mean that he wants to eradicate your fatness. This is a complications issue.
So he said again that I would need to lose weight, and he said the reason was because anesthesia was too dangerous for people in my BMI category.
So there we go. It was the anesthesia. Anesthesia. I don't know if anyone's ever looked into anesthesiology in this community, but it's a fucking tricky ass business. Like there's a reason you have to specialize in it, because you can really fuck someone up if you don't get the levels just right. Like you can granted this was online, so I can't tell the veracity of this story, but there was someone that the anesthesiologist fucked up and it ended up burning their esophagus. So, or like their trachea, or something in their throat. It was like, it's a big issue, and the higher you are, the more likely these fluctuations and these levels are more difficult, because most people aren't your size, and so they're kind of guessing. And yes, anesthesia is more difficult and more dangerous at outside of the healthy weight range, because the healthy weight range is very standardized, where the further you go out from one side or the other, be that overweight or underweight, it becomes more dangerous.
And I said, so how do people even bigger than me get weight loss surgery every single day? They are under anesthesia for that. And we went back.
They're not on their front, though, when they're lying down, which helps. Number one. Number two, the people that get weight loss surgery go to a bariatric clinic, which has an anesthesiologist likely that specializes in those with high BMIs, not a general hospital that uses a general anesthesiologist that works on average sized people. That's how. Because I'm not saying that it's impossible to dose the anesthesia correctly for bigger people, but if someone primarily works on average sized people, then yes, they're far more likely to fuck it up. But someone who works in a bariatric clinic and is an anesthesiologist for a bariatric clinic has worked with patients of morbid obesity variety, super morbid obesity variety a lot, and can know the dosing a bit better.
Back and forth for a long time, and he ended up getting very frustrated and just said,
I would be frustrated with you too. His hands are tied. They don't have an anesthesiologist that specializes in bariatric sized clients. The best that they can do for you is to help you with an in-house weight loss program. You were saying that you can't do that because of an eating disorder. You refuse to do any sort of weight loss like behaviors. Like there's ways that you can work with a nutritionist and work with a therapist. You can work all that in conjunction to make it successful for yourself, but you're unwilling to even try.
look, I don't know what to tell you. This is the hospital's policy. So I had to battle this hospital with this horrible BMI cutoff policy for a whole year.
It's the hospital's BMI policy because there's higher risks and they're trying to avoid a malpractice lawsuit and wrongful death lawsuit. For fuck's sake, can you take a look at this from their perspective? Just for a half fucking second.
All while having a broken back that entire time before I could finally get the surgery they had established was medically necessary. And by the point that I was finally able to get this surgery, they had made me wait so long that over the course of that year, I had developed permanent nerve damage, which is extremely painful to this day and has radically changed how I have to live my life. And that would not have happened if they had just given me the surgery on the same timeline as a thin patient.
They couldn't. They couldn't because of all the reasons that I gave you. And to me, it sounds like I'm wondering if you had to sign a form that indemnifies them from any lawsuit or anything for any complications from your surgery. I have some serious questions about that. And at least if you badgered them, especially in writing, then they could at least have a case. And that's why they finally allowed it, because you were, one, annoying, super unwilling. I'm surprised they didn't fire you as a patient, in all honesty. Because they outlined the hospital has a policy, the doctor had to follow the policy. The policy is there to prevent malpractice lawsuits and wrongful death lawsuits. You were outside of a BMI category that put you at a higher risk for probably a variety of complications. You refused to even try the weight loss or anything to help get your weight down so you could have this surgery. Now you have permanent nerve damage, and I'm genuinely sorry about that, but to a certain extent you can't blame this all on the hospital. You refuse to even try to lose weight. You can continue pushing for that while trying to lose weight, and I know you said that you have an eating disorder and weight loss behaviors were unsafe for you, but this is something that you can bring your therapist in on. Because I think your therapist would at least try to help you find ways to make this safe for you in order for you to meet the hospital's requirements and not trigger a relapse for you in order to get this to move forward. But you didn't do that. You just remained bullheaded, stubborn, and insisted on having things exactly your way. I'm genuinely sorry for her nerve damage, but this was also partially self-inflicted on her part.
Anytime I talk about the problems with the BMI, the most common response I always get is, okay, well, what should we use instead? And the answer is nothing. Get rid of it and replace it with nothing. We literally don't need it. If a patient needs to be assessed for an illness, doctors use diagnostic testing to do that. If a patient has an illness, the doctor will treat that illness. If medications need to be dosed based on weight, there are formulas that already exist to calculate those dosages. If a doctor wants to educate a patient about the benefits of health-promoting behaviors, they can and should do that with all their patients. There is no medical scenario where the BMI or any tool like the BMI is the most effective, most specialized tool for the job. None.
Okay, no one's claiming that it's the most accurate or most specialized tool for the job. No one is saying that. What we're saying is that the BMI is often used as a heuristic to move things along a bit faster, because it does work well enough for a lot of things. And the BMI is, because the truth is that if we got rid of the BMI, they would use body fat percentage or some other form of metric, because weight does play a role no matter what you do. Weight plays a role, whether you're overweight or underweight, it plays a role. So it would just be replaced with something else, even if you think that it shouldn't be. And let's pretend that we just are able to completely get rid of the BMI, not have any sort of fat measuring metric of any kind. The doctor can still look at you. The doctor can hear your labored breathing. The doctor can see elevated blood pressure or elevated cholesterol, or larger, like more issues with musculoskeletal problems, which would be impacted by weight. And they can look at you and they can see that you're obese, severely obese, morbidly obese even, and realize that that's the issue. Getting rid the BMI is just there as a quick tool. Do I think it should be used as much as it is? After we've taken a look at some of the studies and stuff, I don't think that it deserves to be demonized the way it is by the fat acceptance community. I do think that the medical community would benefit from adding something on to the BMI when they're looking at weight. And I'm sure for some of them they do. Truth is that I'm not educated enough, nor do I think is Hannah, on the inner workings of hospital or medical buildings. Like, because we've seen it, she often thinks that she should just get what she wants and doesn't think about the considerations of the hospital and what they have to do, which would lead them to give you the answers that they give you. The thing is that if you look at things from other people's perspectives, it becomes easier to work with them. But you don't want that. You just want what you want.
Already have systems and tools in place to meet whatever a patient's specific health needs may be. Categorizing and pathologizing patients based on weight is and has always been lazy medicine.
Because you're a medical professional, aren't you, Hannah? Sorry, but being a counselor is not the same as being a medical doctor. You don't... it's just... To call it lazy... To call it fucking lazy just seems like someone who's rather ignorant that doesn't understand the field. To me. I don't like that... Oh, God, because it... Perhaps there's a little bit of a personal connection here, because most of you know I work in a library capacity and I really love library work. And I've had more than one person say, oh yeah, you just work with books, you get to read books, you get to just talk to people about books, and it's this really kind of dismissive look at what library work is and the amount of work that goes into it and the amount of considerations, and sometimes the discussions that have to happen around how things are categorized and how things work and how to make things more accessible for people, it's all completely dismissed because someone just views it as, oh, you get to read books all day. It has that vibe to it. You don't know everything that the hospital has to uphold. You don't know the inner conversations that happen. You don't know the standards. So to call it just lazy medicine, I just, God, I hate it. I fucking hate it.
Long time no see. As most of you know, I've been far less active on social media for the past several months because I have 2 jobs, I'm very busy, life is hard. But now, something is happening that is genuinely so important, I feel I have to re-enter the arena. On my page, I talk a lot about how fat folks experience systemic discrimination and have virtually no legal protections. Fat people experience discrimination in employment, housing, insurance, healthcare, education, transportation, public accessibility, and more. Despite being 2/3 of the US population, there are hardly any laws to protect fat people from discrimination, and that's what I want to change. A couple months ago, I was contacted by Dove, and they shared something with me that literally made me cry. Dove informed me they're working with the National Association to Advance Fat Acceptance and the Fat Legal Advocacy Rights and Education Project to pass legislation to end body size discrimination in cities and states all over the country. Legislation is our most powerful tool in the fight to end body size discrimination, which is why I am proudly joining the Campaign for Size Freedom. And we need public support to pass legislation like this. So there are two very important things you can do. The first is to go sign the petition at dove.com/sizefreedom, and the other is to share your story using the hashtag #CampaignForSizeFreedom and tagging Dove. This is a really big deal, and there's a lot more to come, so keep an eye out.
So that sounds like another video to do. Don't you think? It makes me sad. I actually use Dove a lot because I have serious skin issues, and Dove's products really are the gentlest on my skin, but I hate that they're fucking doing this. I want to know more about it though, but I feel like this should be a separate video. Maybe we'll take a look at it, we'll take a look at the hashtag, and then maybe we'll couple that with taking a look at Hannah's website. What do you think? So we only have one TikTok left, and it doesn't look like we're going to have any time to do anything else for this video. But let's go ahead and take a look at the last one.
Happy Pride, y'all! There are fat folks in the queer community just like there are fat folks everywhere. So let's talk about how weight discrimination disproportionately affects the LGBTQ plus community and particularly trans folks. Studies have found that transgender people experience significantly more weight discrimination than cis folks, with trans women being at the highest risk for weight discrimination. Notably, weight discrimination against trans folks is often intertwined with other forms of discrimination, like sexism, transphobia, and homophobia.
If it's intertwined with that, then how much of it is really accounted for weight discrimination? It's a genuine question. Like, how can you separate it to know how much of it is from their weight and how much of it is simply because the person looking at them is maybe like anti-trans, or I don't know, like, just curious.
For example, one study found that trans women who were also sexual minorities reported higher levels of weight discrimination than trans women who identified as heterosexual. One of the things weight discrimination does is...
Wait. You said one study. Hannah, you've posted studies plenty of times. Why do you, like, you don't even have to show it on the screen. If you can give us the name of the study and the authors, I can find it my goddamn self. Where's the study? You just saying that there's a study out there. There's a study. Fucking there's a study that says monkey comes out your ass too. What the fuck? Like, I can say anything and say there's a study about it. It doesn't mean anything if you can't cite it.
Increase the health disparities already experienced by the queer community. For example, many doctors institute weight limits for gender-affirming surgeries, treatments which, by the way, have been scientifically proven to drastically decrease self-harm and even save lives. Unsurprisingly, numerous studies have found that the weight discrimination experienced by queer folks significantly increases rates of depression, anxiety, and eating disorders. We have to recognize the unique challenges faced by the queer community and take steps to address weight discrimination as well as other forms of discrimination experienced by queer people. This includes advocating for policies and practices that promote equality. You can do this by signing the petition at dove.com/sizefreedom and sharing your story using the hashtag #CampaignForSizeFreedom. We all deserve the right to thrive. Happy Pride, y'all.
I don't know. I'm not trans. I haven't had to deal with anything that a trans person has, so I'm going to open this up to anyone who's trans in this community. I'd like to hear your perspective on what Hannah just said. To me, there's a couple of different rules. Like, if the person's too big for surgery, then they're just too big for surgery. The risks are elevated for both during surgery and post-operatively. But then there's also, like, I don't know, certain surgeries, especially like top surgery, have more issues down the road if you're bigger. There's just so much that I don't know about this that I'm hesitant in how much I comment on it. But I'm curious what your guys' perspective is on that. And I think I'm going to leave it there. She didn't cite the study, so I don't fucking know. But we're going to leave it here. I'm going to put the Dove campaign thing on my list of palette cleanser options. Might put this up in a poll, or I might use a choice wheel. I'm not sure which yet. And we'll take a look at that along with her website in another video. Unfortunately, I am pretty much out of time, so I'm going to speed run like the little things I like to add in at the end here. One, I'm not checking my weight this week. Like I said, my birthday was during the week. There's been cake. There's been ice cream. I don't want to say how much I've eaten of that shit. And I'm getting back on track now. But I indulged a lot in cake this week. I'm really getting inspired to do a bunch of different types of videos, and I'm just unsure where to start right now. There's podcasts that I want to cover. I was trying to save some reveals for project plans that I have for the 3,000 subscriber special, because we're getting really close. We're only like a little over 100 subscribers away from reaching that. So I want to kind of keep that on lockdown until I reach that milestone. For my Dumping Crown channel, I recently recorded the first part of a Let's Play for Hatoful Boyfriend. And for those of you who don't know what Hatoful Boyfriend is, it's a dating sim with pigeons. I'm not fucking kidding. It's fucking weird. Just that I've only played about 20 minutes of it, and it's fucking weird. And it's not a commenter's choice, it's just me going through it. And it'll be interesting. It'll be really interesting to see how things unfold in this. There's a lot of what seem to be love interests already, and there's a lot of them, and it's just a weird game. I mean, I know it's a meme, and I've managed to be completely, like, I don't know anything. Really, I've managed to stay behind any spoilers for it, or any of the deep story connections with it, or anything that goes on with it. So it is a blind Let's Play. And it'll be interesting going forward. And unfortunately, I really have to go. So I'm going to end it here. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.